We're going to be in Matthew chapter 1 today, and the title of the message is When the Way is Unclear. And so if you would, please pray with me. Lord, we thank you so much for the opportunity to open your word. And God, I pray that you would open our eyes, you would open our ears to hear what you want to say to us today. But Lord, I also pray that you would give us wisdom, the powerful story of your birth and Lord, your conception and everything that took place, those details. I pray, Lord, that we would be inspired in the lives that we live to walk by faith and not by sight. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, as we open up to Matthew chapter 1, we'll be back in Matthew chapter 20 something in January, but we'll be in Matthew chapter 1. We're going to be going in verses 18 to 25. And as we open up there, we're introduced to a man by the name of Joseph. Joseph was betrothed, or in our modern day terminology, engaged to a woman named Mary. Mary was chosen by the Lord to carry the Messiah, to birth the Messiah. And in Luke chapter 1, we see an angel visit Mary, tell her that she is the virgin who will be with child who was prophesied about in the Old Testament. She would be the one who would birth the Messiah. It would happen by the Holy Spirit, and that would be God's will for her life, that she would birth and bear and carry Jesus. Mary at this time was engaged to Joseph. Mary accepted the will of the Lord. She asked some questions of the angel, accepted the will of the Lord. And Joseph, the one who she's engaged to, would soon find out that information as well, but he wouldn't find out from an angel. We believe likely that he found out from Mary. And this would be something that would totally change the plans that he had in place. The way forward, the way that he thought that it would go when he found out that the woman he was engaged to was pregnant, and it was not by him, this was something that would dismantle his dreams. But the Lord had a purpose even in that. Without a clear direction, without knowing exactly what to do, he did what many men do when they don't have directions or instructions. They just proceed, figure it out. So he put a plan in place, but the Lord meets him in the midst of that as he's considering it. The reality is that Joseph was an essential part of the Messiah's birth story, an essential part of who Jesus would be in his life. His legal line and lineage, which we'll talk about in a bit, was oh so important. Often around this time, we look at the story from Mary's point of view. You go to Luke chapter 1, you see Mary's point of view and the way that she processed through that. And last week we looked as the angel Gabriel came to Elizabeth and Zacharias and Jesus' forerunner. And then you go through Luke chapter 1, and it's a beautiful story where the angel then comes to Mary, and then she magnifies and glorifies the Lord in the Magnificat. In Matthew, we center our focus on Joseph. And it's interesting because when you look at like the Christmas season, this time of year, Joseph is kind of like the forgotten man. I mean, he's an integral part of the story, but Mary, she always gets top billing. And I mean, rightfully so, right? She was the virgin prophesied about in Isaiah chapter 7, but it's almost like to this extreme degree, Joseph is the forgotten man. And so we look at all of these situations and the circumstances and the characters and the people who were a part of this story. And Joseph is kind of like in the background somewhere. Did you know that there is not one recorded word from Joseph in the scripture? We know he spoke, but there's no recorded word from him. And he can easily be the forgotten man. He was essential. In addition to thinking about Joseph, can you name me one Christmas carol that is about Joseph? No, you can't. You can't name me one Christmas Carol. Well, maybe you could, but you'd have to go pretty deep into the archives to find something about Joseph. Let me just read to you a few. Mary, did you know that your baby boy would be Lord of all creation? Did you know that your baby boy would one day rule the nations? You know that song. Did Joseph know anything? Was there anything that Joseph knew at this time? Joseph, did you know anything? Just could he get one verse in that? Joseph, did you know? What about this? What child is this who lay to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping? The song goes on. The angels greet, the shepherds watch, the ox and donkeys are feeding. Well, what was Joseph doing? Did the baby ever sit on Joseph's lap while he was sleeping? I know my kids sat on my lap while I was sleeping. What was Joseph doing? Or silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin, mother and child. Then you have the shepherds quaking at the sight. You have Jesus sleeping in heavenly peace, but Joseph is nowhere to be found. It's like you have this nativity scene and you're going, what are we going to do with Joseph? You just put him back there with the sheep or something. Just we'll figure out what to do with Joseph later, but sometimes we never figure out what to do with Joseph. Put him in the background. Well, this morning I'm going to bring him to the foreground. And we're going to talk about the situation that Joseph was facing at the news of Jesus coming. And it's here that we'll see how it all came about. Because Joseph would be Jesus' earthly father. He would accept Mary, and in so doing would fulfill the will of the heavenly Father. Though the way forward was unclear, though there were many mountains to climb, and though there were many difficulties ahead, he chose the will of the Lord for his life, and in so doing, an integral part in Jesus' birth story. Let's read Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 to 25. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child by the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, her husband, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her, planned to send her away secretly. But when he had considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you will call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. And now all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Verse 23, behold, the virgin shall be with child and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. Joseph awoke from his sleep and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him and took Mary as his wife, but kept her a virgin until she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. So we see the specifics of Mary's story in Luke 1. She says, may it be done to me according to the will, according to the word of the Lord. And like I said, we don't know the specifics of Joseph's situation, but we know that he found out. And when he found out, he had great doubt about whether or not he should proceed with the plans that he had to marry Mary. He was put in this place whereby he had more questions than answers. He didn't know the way forward and had many questions to consider. The way forward was unclear. And for you and me, this is an important word for us this morning, because though maybe not to the magnitude and degree of Jesus' birth, there are situations that we find ourselves in this life where the way forward is unclear. The facts that we have, they're cloudy at best. We have some information, but we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I would argue that in each and every one of those situations, God has something to say. God has more to say to us so that we would go his way rather than according to our own plans. And so I encourage you this morning, when the way is unclear, to surrender your plans into God's hands. When the way is unclear, to say, God, what do you want me to do? How would you have me respond? I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know who you are, and I'm trusting you. To surrender is to yield something, possession or power into another's hands. I surrender my own will. I surrender my own wants. I surrender my own plans into your hands, Lord. It's in your power. You tell me how to proceed. And so if a person surrenders their plans into God's hands, they are surrendering even their thoughts associated with the way forward. God, I want your thoughts. I want your desires. And that's the way I'll proceed. And it's important to catch the reality that Joseph had his own set of plans. He had his own set of dreams. He was engaged. He was getting ready to be married. He was in the process of preparing a place for he and his bride after their wedding day. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, where the husband, the groom, would go and prepare a place, build a place. But everything in Joseph's life, his future plans, got dismantled in 2 verses. You ever feel like that? There's just a lot going on, and in a short time, things change. And they change rather quickly. Well, this is what happened with Joseph. It says in verse 18, the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. His mother was betrothed to Joseph. Before they came together, she was found to be with child, and Joseph was a righteous man. Joseph was a righteous man, but he did not want to disgrace her, so he planned to send her away secretly. Other translations say he planned to divorce her quietly. Joseph and Mary had been betrothed, and in that day, betrothal was a binding engagement. And so there's these customs associated with marriage in their day, these Jewish customs, and they're different than we know. So the parents of the bride and the groom would arrange this marriage, sometimes without even consulting the bride and the groom. They would agree on it. It's like, oh, I want, our kids are, around the same age, or they're within a reasonable age. I like your family, you like our family. Let's come to some sort of agreement so that your son can marry my daughter. Betrothal, engagement would be negotiated. There would be a bride price paid by the groom's parents, and an announcement would be made. The couple would then be pledged to one another. And so this betrothal was a legally binding agreement, though the actual consummation of the marriage would not happen typically until up to a year. The only way to break that betrothal was by divorce. And if a man died during the betrothal period, the woman would be considered a widow. And so everything was in place during this betrothal period, but there were a few things going on. They weren't allowed to have physical contact during this time. And so they would be betrothed. But at the end of that, the wedding, the marriage would be official. The end of that time. So they're in this period, generally a year, going on, where they're waiting for that day, and Joseph is preparing for that day. Also, she's preparing in her way. Joseph, we know, was a carpenter. Mark 6 says that he was a carpenter. Now, catch this, though. The Greek word is tekton, which actually means craftsman or builder. So he was a craftsman or a builder. It's usually referred to as someone who worked with hard materials, stone, metal, and potentially wood. We often think of a carpenter as, hammer, nails, wood. He's more like a maybe even a stone mason, because they would fit things with stone. Now, they did doors and windows with wood, but stone was a lot of the material that people would work with in that day. Anyhow, he's working, he's earning his wages as a builder, he's preparing a place for he and his wife, and in the middle of this time, the news breaks. Mary's pregnant. And he hasn't touched her. He was doing what he was supposed to do. He's a righteous man. And this news comes, and we don't know how all that story goes down. So, I think with the Christmas story, there's a lot of lacquer on it. You know what I mean by a lot of lacquer on it? I'm going to put a little lacquer on it, okay? But then we're going to sand it down, and we'll get to the raw wood. But the situation, you think about, how did he find out this information? What was that like? As he has these dreams and these hopes and these plans, and this information comes while he's out working and putting all that he can into it. She says, this is of the Holy Spirit. Oh, really? Oh, really? Holy Spirit, huh? By the way, that wouldn't work today, okay? That would not work today. There was only one virgin who was with child. That was Mary. Prophecy's already been fulfilled, okay? It was during that time that he finds out Joseph was a righteous man, and he decides that he's going to divorce her quietly. He's going to send her away quietly. He didn't want to go against God's laws. To take Mary would be admitting some form of guilt, and he was not guilty. But what we see is that he loved Mary. He loved Mary, and he showed it because there were three options that he would have had. Here's the first. He could have exposed her publicly, which would have resulted potentially in stoning and absolutely in shaming. We see Jesus, when the woman is caught in adultery, what do they say? The law of Moses says to stone such a woman. So if he would have exposed her publicly, she would have been extremely shamed, potentially even stoned. He could have sought a private divorce, and this is the direction that he headed in. This is where a person brings two witnesses and a certificate that ends the relationship. They do so privately. The third option was he could proceed to marry Mary. He could proceed to marry her, and it seems he could not bring himself to do that. So he opted for number two. Public divorce would have disgraced her. He did not want to humiliate her. And so in hearing the news, though it's different, the situation in that day, I think we can apply this even into our day. If you hear this news, there is something that you would assume, a way in which you would assume that it went down, and he goes with the best plan that he thought he could put in place. It was the most logical thing for him to do. It was actually, considering the circumstance, the most gracious thing that he could do, was to do so quietly. But these weren't normal circumstances. God was at work. God was at work. And though Joseph made certain plans, the Lord had a purpose that was bigger. He had a purpose that was bigger. And what Joseph was being primed for in those two verses that absolutely changed his life, he was being primed for God's purpose. And when you feel like something happens and it happens quickly and it seems like, man, I just wish I could delete those two verses and everything would go back to normal, what we have to understand is that we're being primed for God's purpose. That God is at work and that God can work in anything, even difficult things. What we must do, though, is surrender our plans into his hands. Why? Because Proverbs 19:21 says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. So if I want to live with purpose, a prevailing purpose, then I need to surrender my plans into God's hands, because ultimately, the sooner that I do that, the sooner that his purpose in my life will prevail. Often people kick against that. I'm going to go my own way. I'm going to plot my own plan. But what we understand is that we can plan all that we want, but it's the Lord's purpose that's going to prevail. So I would rather go to the source and let him be my first resource rather than my last resort. To pursue him. Now, I don't know. I get Joseph to a degree. I get Joseph in large part. I mean, when something comes up, I like to put a plan in place. Let's go. When something breaks, I want to try and fix it even if I don't know how to fix it. I just kind of dive in, and sometimes in my fixing it, it ends up worse off than it was beforehand. There's lessons there. I'm just that type of person. I kind of dive in, and I've had to learn throughout time. My wife has helped me a lot with that, because when we first got married, they have this thing called the WebMD symptom checker. I'm feeling a little something, Just dial it up online. Well, this is what the WebMD says. That's what it is. I don't need to go to the doctor. And she wasn't super happy when I did that, but when we had our first son, our first child, and I went to the WebMD checker, it was not going to work. Don't WebMD check our son. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's when you really see what's going on here. But my wife has helped me a lot with that. It's much better still to seek a physician, but I think it's similar in our lives. We get information, we process, and we plan. But if we are in Christ, we must take the symptom that we have or what we're experiencing or what has come up to him first and allow him and his purpose to prevail in our lives. We must surrender our plans into his hands. By the way, I talked to you about WebMD. I've been using this really cool fact checker. It's called the Bible. This year, I've been using that fact checker more than ever. And that's the real deal. We have to go to the truth checker, the fact checker. We have to go to the Lord first and foremost. It's the Bible. It gives great insights and instruction. In fact, there's this book. It's called the Book of Proverbs. And the book of Proverbs is like this amazing wisdom. It's just wisdom upon wisdom. And want to know an easy daily devotional for you? 1 chapter of Proverbs per day. And you'll get through the book. And if you really want to go in, do 1 chapter of Proverbs and 5 chapters of Psalms. You'll get through both books in a month. And you'll be so filled up and so encouraged. In fact, I was just thinking of that this morning. I'm like, let's find a proverb. We need some wisdom today, right? Let's find a proverb for the 20th that applies to what we're looking at with Joseph. You ready? Proverbs 25. A plan in the heart is like deep water, but a person of understanding draws it out. I looked up this morning. I'm like, what can we apply here from Proverbs today? That's pretty cool, right? Talking about this deep well, these plans, this deep well, but drawing out that. And we have to draw that out when we need wisdom. Draw it out in God's word. Seek the Lord. Ask for wisdom, and he will give it. As we get back to Joseph, that's what he needs. He needs wisdom. He's in a situation where he needs some facts and he needs some truth. And if you think about it with me, it's kind of like one of those movies where you see the different scenes. Like, what happened with this person and their situation, and then it goes over to this other scene and you see that person and that situation, but you know that this person over here doesn't know what happened over here, and they're getting ready to do this thing, and you're looking at it and you're on the edge of your seat and you're going, Joseph, read Luke chapter 1. But he didn't have Luke chapter 1. He couldn't draw on that. He was needing to put a plan in place. But we want to look at that and we go, Joseph, Mary's telling the truth. I know, I would be shocked too. I'd probably do exactly what you would do, but man, this is different. There's something different going on. And I wonder how many times we self-diagnose without going to the source of life, without going to our Lord who sees all things. I've quoted this scripture many times this year, and I'm going to quote it again. Jeremiah 33:3, call to me, I will answer you. I will show you great and mighty things you do not know. Why do I keep quoting this year? Because I want us to be a people who call upon the Lord and then trust him to tell us the things that we do not know. Joseph didn't know the way forward. He proceeded or began to, according to his own plans. The Lord, however, was going to show him the way. And God's will would be revealed. And I want to encourage you in your life to wait for God's will. Before you proceed according to your own plans, surrender your plans into his hands and then proceed according to his will. James 4:13-15 says, now listen, You who say today or tomorrow, I will go to this or that city, or spend a year there, or carry on business and make money. Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? It's a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this and do that. Why? Because it's the Lord's will. It's the Lord's purpose that will prevail. And we're good at making these plans. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a mover. I'm going to be a shaker. But what we want to do and say, Lord, is this your will? Your will be done in my life. What is God's will? James is pointing us toward the importance of placing our plans in God's hands. And for Joseph, he was being asked to surrender his dreams and his plans, and he would see God's prevailing purpose in a child that would only be delivered by God's hand. This child would only come about by God's hand, but the Lord was calling upon Joseph to set aside his own plan, set aside his own dreams, and allow God's plan to be his plan, God's purpose to prevail in Joseph's life. Now, that's a tough thing, laying down your own will. That's a tough thing, laying down your own plans. But when you understand that it's God's purpose that will prevail, let's not go around and around in circles. Let's just go to the one who knows. As you pursue the Lord's purpose in your life, push past your plans, surrender them into his hands, and consider in your life what the Lord desires to deliver. What does the Lord want to deliver in your life, in your situation, in the midst of difficulty, in the midst of trial, or even in the good times? What does the Lord want to deliver in your life and through your life? In verse 20, says, but when he had considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. He says, when Joseph considered this, the Greek word there is enthumaiomai. It means to resolve in one's mind. He was considering it. It was revolving in his mind. It was going around and around in his mind. He couldn't let it go. He was deliberating on it. He was pondering on it. In other words, he had put this plan in place, but it was still revolving in his mind. He just was not sure about this. There was something that was amiss here. It was revolving around, and there was something that the Lord wanted and needed Joseph to know. There was something that the Lord wanted revolving around in Joseph's mind, and it wasn't Joseph's plan. It was the Lord's plan. It was the Lord's purpose in his life. And so Joseph, as this is revolving around in his mind, he lays down to get some much needed sleep. You know, when there's something just eating away at your mind, revolving in your mind, you just can't let it go. I imagine it was one of those type of sleeps. All of a sudden, you just kind of drift off. An angel of the Lord comes to him in his dream. Calls him son of David. He reminds him of his lineage, his legal lineage. He was in the line of David. He was in the line of David. It was a lineage of power and strength. A legal lineage tied to the throne of David. He says, Joseph, son of David. That's who you are. Do not be afraid. The way it's written means to stop an action that's already going on. He's already afraid. It's already there. It's already happened. In other words, he's saying, don't give thought to your fears. Don't give thought to your fears. Stop being afraid. Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid. He was reminded of who he was, and then he was given instruction regarding what to do. And I want to tell you this morning, if you are in Christ, you have a line, a lineage in Christ of power and strength and purpose. And I think that sometimes when we're fearing, sometimes when we're overwhelmed, sometimes when we're headed into that kind of sleep because something's revolving in our mind, we need to understand who we are. Child of God. Power and strength and purpose. Samuel, son of God. Jimmy, son of God. Because we're part of God's family. And when we fear, when we're up against it, and we don't know the way, that's what we have to cling to. God's truth. The reality of who we are in Christ. 1 Timothy 1:7 says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but he's given us a spirit of power and of love and of sound mind. Man, when we're fearing, that's not the spirit that God has given us. And so we have to cling to the power and the love and the sound mind that he has given us. Because if we are in Christ, our lives are defined by him and the line that he has welcomed us into. He has adopted us in as sons and daughters. But I have to tell you something, though adopted, we have to also be those who are adapted to the kingdom culture, to who we are in Christ. You can be adopted into something. You can know some things, but you have to live in such a way that you're not just adopted, but your life is adapted to that reality. First I want to say John 1:11-12. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet all who did receive him, those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. If you are in Christ, say right now, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. You got to say it like you believe it. Say it again. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. And I don't want that to just be here. I know, though it needs to be there, I want it to be here, and I want it to be strapped to my feet. I'm a child of God. Romans 8:15-17, for you have not received a spirit of slavery, leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons and daughters, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if we are children, then we are heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. If indeed we suffer with him so that we may be glorified with him. We are heirs. We've been blessed with every spiritual blessing. You may say, oh man, I didn't get an inheritance when my mother or my father passed away. Don't even worry about it. You have an inheritance waiting for you that's far beyond what you could ask or imagine or even think. Because you're a child of God. You've been adopted, but now you have to live adapted to who you are in him. Now, that does not mean that we tell him what to do. Well, I'm your child of God. No, children, gotta listen. We got to follow his will. And that's part of being in his family. You know, we had a relative, Kathy and I did, who was living just a very, very unhealthy lifestyle. Whatever you think of unhealthy, times that by about 5. And this was how our relative was living. Many living situations didn't work out. This relative ended up living with us for a time. One of the things I said over and over again, because they would say, well, you don't know what my life's like. You don't know what it's like to be me. I said, you're absolutely right. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I know what healthy living looks like. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're going to choose. You may have not made the right decision yesterday. It may have not gone the way that you wanted it to go. Man, you may have messed up. You may have thought that you ruined your life. But guess what? What we're going to do today, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And we choose this day who we're going to serve. And I'm not going to let what was be the definer of what is. I'm going to let God be that. When we are God's children, we must live as his children, though, not in fear. It says, do not fear. God's not given you a spirit of fear. Do not worry about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. No, Lord, I'm trusting you. And what I'm going to do in that determination is to live in such a way where I constantly consider what God desires to deliver in and through my life. That's what I want to revolve around in my mind. When I go to the grocery store, God, is there someone in this grocery store that you want to use me in their life? When I am out in my neighborhood, Lord, is there something that you want me to say to this person? I want to walk according to your will. I want to surrender my plans into your hands. Because I believe that sometimes we can believe a lie that people don't want to hear it. And so we stay back, we refrain, we hold off. But no. We have to trust the Lord. Lord, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to say it? How do you want me to do it? By your Spirit, Lord, make it so. There are so many potential outcomes in our lives that can bring about great fear. Well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? Or what if what's going on right now in our country means it's going to get 100 times worse over the next year? Look, God said don't live in fear. We've not faced that yet. God's going to give us the grace we need on that day. So someone says, well, what if? Okay, what if? If it does, then I trust that the Lord will give us wisdom when we call upon him when we need that wisdom. For today, man, I've got enough to think about. And so I'm just going to trust God today. I'm not going to worry about, what if things get worse or what if things get better? Why? Because I know that God is good. And he's good all the time, and he's good right now. And so since I know that God has been good, is good, I trust that he will be good. And even if no one else is good, God is still good, okay? And he's still going to be good because that's who he is. He's a good, good father. That's one of my daughter's favorite songs. I love it. Psalm 118:6. The Lord is for me. I will not fear. What can man do to me? What can man do to me? If the Lord is for us, who can be against us? The Lord is for me. I'm not going to fear. What can man do to me? Joseph is reminded of who he is, and then he's given instruction as to what to do. What Joseph was considering, what was revolving around in his mind was not in line with God's purpose, with God's prevailing purpose. And I might say even to you personally, if we just get personal for a moment, there may be some things rattling in your mind this morning that are not in line with God's purpose in your life. And you have to get before the Lord and you have to say, I'm going to bind that. I'm going to bind that up. I'm going to take every thought captive. Because what's revolving in my mind is not in line with God's purpose. It's not in line with who I am in Christ. And it's not in line with who he calls me to be. And so, Lord, transform my thoughts. The Bible prophesied a couple things. Well, more than a couple things. Two things of note right now. Virgin would be with child, okay? So there would be a virgin who would have a child. But we also know, and that would be the Messiah, okay? That would be the sign that all would see, was the virgin would be with child. It's a pretty significant sign. But there's another prophecy that is important to consider. And we talked about it earlier. That's that the Messiah would come through the legal line of David. How'd you get your legal line? Dad. You got your legal line from dad. So you're talking about a virgin with child who needs legal lineage. Now, we know that the book of Luke actually traces back Mary's lineage to David, so he had it physically, but legally, through Joseph, the Lord, was going to use Joseph to accept, receive, adopt, foster, whatever you want to call it, Jesus, and Jesus would have legal lineage to David. Both had to be true. They were both necessary. Mary was very, very necessary. Joseph was necessary. God was going to use him. Joseph is told by this angel that he should marry Mary, name the baby Jesus, which they were both told that. Mary and Joseph were told that. I'd like to see that conversation. You know, like after he accepts Mary to go back, like, Mary, let's do this thing. Let's do this. I know we need to name him Jesus. She's like, oh, who told you that? An angel. Oh, an angel told me that too. Yes, let's name him Jesus. That'll be good. Okay, anyway, he was the one who would save his people from their sins. And what it says in verse 22 and 23 is, now all this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Behold, the virgin will be with child. She'll bear a son. They call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. He would be God with us. And everything, it all took place to fulfill God's will. This situation, this circumstance, the fact that Mary was with child, it made Joseph's life inconvenient. Very inconvenient, but extraordinarily significant. Extraordinarily significant. Beyond the significance of any plan that he could ever put in place for himself. Inconvenient? Yes. Significant? Oh, amazingly so. And may it be said of you and me in our lives when we look back over it, that it all took place so that the will of the Lord would be fulfilled. And when we pursue inconvenience and we see our dreams taken off the plate, the way in which we thought it would go, when we see that go and fall by the wayside, may it be true of you and me when we pursue that inconvenience, when we pursue that difficulty, that everything took place to fulfill the will of the Lord. Not my will, Lord, yours be done. We're supposed to pray that every day, but may it go from here to here and strap it to our feet. That everything would be done in our lives to fulfill God's will. Each step of the way, Joseph and Mary would need to take God at his word. That's another way of saying they needed to walk by faith and not by sight. And in your life and mine, it's true as well. We have to walk by faith and not by sight, because if we walk according to what we see or what another believes, or we walk according to the latest news flash, we're walking according to what we see. And when we walk according to what we see, we're filled with great worry. But when we walk by faith and not by sight, we're filled with faith to live a faithful life. The Bible says it's required of servants that one be found faithful. Okay, Lord, what do you want me to be faithful to? I mean, you're talking about kingdom equity, walking by faith. I mean, if you work a job, you get a review once a year, and if you do well on that review, maybe you'll get like a 10% raise or a 2% raise or whatever. Someone laughed. I don't know what, 1%, I don't know, whatever the raise is, you do well and then they show you all these metrics. It's like the Bible says it's required of servants that one be found faithful. That we walk by faith. Like if there's kingdom equity in that, if there's kingdom equity in walking by faith, like God blesses faithfulness, then I want to be counted as blessed. Then I want to walk by faith and not by sight. And it seems that in the story, The hard part was still ahead of her, Joseph. It says Joseph woke up from his sleep and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took Mary as his wife, but kept her a virgin until she gave birth to a son. He'd been given the directives in a dream. He knew that it was from the Lord. He knew that this was an angel of the Lord who was speaking to him in his dream. He was given these directives, but now he had to wake up, and now the dream was over, and now he had to actually walk this thing out. And when we hear from the Lord, man, it's good, like yes and amen. And then we leave out of the church doors, or we leave out of that place, and we understand that now I actually have to walk this thing out. And the only way that he was going to walk this thing out is to walk by faith and not by sight. And my friends, the only way that we're going to walk out God's will in this life is to walk by faith and not by sight. One day, one situation, one circumstance at a time. Lord, what do you want me to do? If faithfulness is what's required of me, then Lord, show me what that needs to be currently. Show me what that needs to be this afternoon and tomorrow and the next day. Joseph, here's what he would do. He would keep her a virgin until they gave birth to Jesus. So they would have other children after Jesus, but until she gave birth, so he would marry Mary, but until she gave birth to this son, he would keep her a virgin. Now, everyone knows that would be very challenging in and of itself. You got to walk by faith in that, okay? You've been married, now you got to wait. Joseph would take her to Bethlehem, where the baby would be born. There was a decree issued. That's in the jurisdiction of Herod the Grinch. I mean, Herod the not so great. I mean, Herod the, you know what Herod I'm talking about. It'd be in Herod's jurisdiction. And the wise men would tip him off that a baby had been born. He would kill the babies of Bethlehem, every male child 2 years and under. Joseph was risking his family's life. They would go to Egypt. He would live there for 2 years. He would give up his career in Nazareth, and he would go move to Egypt. We understand that there may have been some really great provision from the Lord in that time, but still he would have to say goodbye to the land that he was living in, say goodbye to his career, go to Egypt for 2 years. So he's living in Egypt as a fugitive. Then he would go back to Nazareth after 2 years, and he would start it all over again. Joseph was a craftsman. He'd have to rebuild up his business. And then when they went back to Nazareth, you can only imagine the gossip that would ensue. Oh, how old is your baby? How many months? Counting back the time. When did you get married officially? He would go to that town that would gossip. And the gossip, my friends, would never end. In fact, Jesus, when he was growing up, even the Pharisees said this to him. We were not born of fornication. Why would they say that? Because they were intimating that he was. Another time, on another occasion, the Pharisees would say, well, we know who our Father is. All that to say that Jesus may have not. Joseph had to adjust his entire life around Jesus. Things got difficult after the dream, but he was willing to fulfill God's will. And he was willing to walk by faith and not by sight. And by choosing Jesus and revolving his life around him, Joseph fulfilled the will of the Lord. And I'm telling you today, by choosing Jesus and revolving your life around him, you too will fulfill the will of the Lord in your life. Inconvenient, many times, yes, but extraordinarily significant. Extraordinarily significant. They chose Jesus. And they didn't just choose him and then, oh yeah, we chose him, but let's not keep up with that choice. No, every day they were reminded of their choice of choosing Jesus. Their lives revolved around him. I want to ask you a question. Because I know that, those of us who are in Christ, we can look back to a time in our life where we said, yeah, I accepted Christ. But is your life revolving around him? I mean, are your steps affected by that choice? Because for Joseph and Mary, they absolutely were. Everything that they did, every step that they took was centered on the choice that they made for Jesus. They were walking by faith. Is that true of you? Are your steps even affected by that? What you do and what you will not do. I ask this question, are you willing for God to interrupt your life? To interrupt your own dreams, to interrupt your own plans? Something that you might look at today and go, man, that is inconvenient. But trusting God that when his purpose prevails in your life, it will be extraordinarily significant. The Bible says we walk by faith, not by sight. The Bible says without faith, it's impossible to please him. The Bible says by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed by going to a place which he was to receive for an inheritance. And so he left his comforts. He left his hometown, not knowing where he was going, for he was looking for a city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Where are you headed? Where are you going? Are you looking for a city whose foundations and builder is God? Or are you going somewhere else? I tell you what, if you're headed towards heaven, Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. We look forward to that. That's in eternity, but let me tell you the language of eternity. It's faith. Believing God at his word. Taking God at his word. And when the way is unclear, you got to walk by faith and not by sight. Often we want the clear path and then we want to run into it. But no. Often it's not how faith works. It's not by sight. It's walking by faith. It's not blind faith. It's not faith in faith. It's not faith in self. It's faith in God and taking him at his word. And I want his purpose to prevail in my life. And I want his purpose in your life to prevail. I'm reminded of Joshua when the priests were told to take the Ark of the Covenant down to the water. And he says, put your feet in the water. And the water was at flood stage. Well, if I tell him to go down in the water and you don't do anything, God, I'm going to look like a fool. He says, just go down to the water. It's in flood stage. Often we want it to say, okay, Lord, I'm going to stand at that edge and then you do that and then I'll move. And Lord say, no, you just go because you know what my word says. And let me move. Let me do what only I can do. Are you willing in your life to walk by faith and not by sight? I think that some of you right now know that there's something that's got to change in order to align your life with what God has assigned. And I'm telling you right now, to revolve your life around Christ and make whatever change is necessary to that. If that means you need to move from one situation to another. Young people, maybe you're in a relationship with a girlfriend and you know that it's wrong. You know that you need to end that because that is not a part of God's plan for you. You just got to do it. And you got to trust the Lord. You got to take him at his word. Some people are in an unhealthy situation or circumstance. Or maybe you're having the time of your life and the Lord's just saying, hey, I'm calling you to make this sacrifice. walk by faith and not by sight. When the way's unclear, walk by faith, not by sight. Surrender your plans into his hands and consider what God wants to deliver in your life. Would you partner with God in your life and allow him to use you far beyond what you could imagine, ask, or even